Few figures in the history of Christianity exposed the dangers of unchecked religious power as clearly as Pope John XII. His papacy stands not as a moment of spiritual leadership, but as a warning of what happens when the highest moral authority becomes indistinguishable from political ambition, corruption, and personal indulgence. John XII did not simply fail as a pope. He embodied the collapse of an institution that had drifted far from its spiritual foundations. Born as Octavian of Rome around the year 937, he was raised within one of the most powerful Roman families of the time. The papacy during the 10th century was not governed primarily by holiness or theological wisdom, but by noble bloodlines, alliances, and violence. When Octavian became pope at approximately 18 years old, he did so not because of spiritual calling, but because his family controlled Rome. The title of pope was inherited as one might inherit land or wealth. From the moment he ascended to the papal throne, John XII ruled as a secular prince rather than a spiritual shepherd. The Lateran Palace, the seat of the papacy, was transformed into a court of excess. Contemporary chroniclers, including bishops and church officials, described a pope who openly engaged in gambling, drinking, and sexual relationships, even within the walls of the Vatican itself. The sacred space, meant to symbolize holiness, became a reflection of decadence. Accusations against John XII were not isolated rumors, but repeated and documented claims from multiple sources. He was accused of simony, selling church offices for money. He was charged with perjury, with violating oaths sworn before God. He was accused of adultery, incest, and maintaining mistresses openly. Even more disturbing were accusations of violence, including ordering executions and acts of physical brutality against political enemies. What made his reign particularly scandalous was not merely his personal behavior, but the system that protected him. The papacy under John XII operated without meaningful accountability. There were no effective mechanisms to restrain papal power. The belief that the Pope stood above judgment allowed corruption to flourish unchecked. Criticism was interpreted as rebellion, and dissent was met with fear rather than dialogue. John XI's papacy reveals a deeper problem within the medieval church, the fusion of spiritual authority with absolute political power. The Pope was not only the head of the church, but a ruler who commanded armies, forged alliances, and manipulated political outcomes. In such a system, faith became secondary to control, and spiritual leadership was replaced by domination. Eventually, opposition could no longer be contained. John XI's behavior alarmed even those within the church who had long tolerated corruption. A synod was convened under the authority of Emperor Otto I, and for the first time, the crimes of a reigning pope were formally listed and examined. The charges were extensive and severe, portraying a man utterly unfit for spiritual leadership. The synod declared John XII deposed. Yet even this moment of accountability revealed the fragility of reform. Shortly after being removed, John XII regained power through political maneuvering and intimidation. His return demonstrated how deeply corruption had embedded itself within the institution. Repentance was absent. Reform was resisted. Power was reclaimed, not corrected. His death, sudden and surrounded by scandal, ended one of the most infamous papacies in history. Accounts differ, but many describe a violent or morally compromising end, reinforcing the image of a life ruled by excess rather than reflection. His passing brought relief to some, but the damage was already done. The legacy of Pope John XII extended far beyond his lifetime. For centuries, his reign stood as evidence cited by critics, reformers, and later Protestant thinkers as proof that the Church could become morally bankrupt when insulated from accountability. His papacy became a symbol of how spiritual authority, when protected by political power and fear, can betray the faith it claims to guard. John XII did not cause the collapse of the Church, but he exposed its vulnerability. He revealed that an institution claiming divine authority is not immune to human corruption. His reign reminds history that holiness cannot be inherited, that leadership without accountability decays, and that faith controlled by power risks becoming indistinguishable from tyranny. The story of John XII is not merely a scandalous episode, it is a lesson. It teaches that religious institutions must be judged not by their claims of authority, but by their moral integrity. When the Church protects power instead of truth, it risks losing both. His papacy stands as one of the darkest chapters in Christian history, not because it destroyed faith, but because it showed how easily faith can be distorted when conscience is replaced by ambition.